welcome into the Bear Down Buzz podcast. I'm joined by Isaac and Joe. Fellows, we did take a bit of a break here, but that's okay. We're back here to recollect ourselves and talk some Bears football. So I wanted to kind of start off, since we did take a bit of a break, just a general overview of what you guys thought of the preseason in general. What are some of the positives, some of the negatives you might have saw? Isaac, I will start with you.
Yeah, overall, I think it was a fantastic preseason. We ended 4-0, so that's amazing. I'll kind of focus on the last game with the Chiefs. It was nice to see the more like third stringers get an opportunity because in the game against the Bengals, it was mostly the first stringers, like the whole first half, and then it was kind of like second stringers, second half, maybe a little bit of the third. But it was cool to see these guys get an opportunity. I think they balled out, especially like towards the end. We saw Adrian Colbert, the safety, get a nice hit, and that turned into a pick six. Reddy Stewart, which is a fan favorite among us and with the fans, but he had a really nice pick six. It was nice to see, but the reality is that sometimes luck doesn't go with some players. They're just unlucky, especially with Ian Wheeler, a fan favorite in Hard Knocks, and I was really rooting for him. I thought he had a spot potentially in the 53-man roster, but he did get injured. He tore his ACL, which sucks. But the nice thing is Ryan Poles is gonna give him another opportunity. He was telling him, "Hey, I'm gonna put you on IR, but we'll see when you're back to full health, if you can be able to, show us that you still have what it takes to make an NFL roster," which was cool. Um, but yeah, overall, I was very optimistic preseason for me. Like I'm really excited with our team. I'm really excited with the path we're gonna take this season, and I think it's just gonna be a really fun season. What about you, Joe?
So I think my two biggest takeaways from the preseason are one, just the amount of depth the team has. You couldn't say that 2 years ago. This team basically just had a bunch of scrubs playing for them a couple of years ago. Now we have a great starting lineup, and then the twos and threes all looked great throughout the preseason. That shows in the victories we have. We smacked teams. No one was even came close to us. The closest were the Chiefs. That's only because, I mean, obviously they've won the Super Bowl 2 years in a row, so they've got to have at least some depth. Obviously, the other takeaway is that Caleb Williams looked good. I mean, he had that great first game in Buffalo, and then the second game that he played against the Bengals, I think we talked about that. He didn't look as good, but it still showed that he can get over not looking good for like a quarter. He came back after the first quarter and led the team in the scoring drive, had some good throws. Yeah, he showed he can overcome adversity, which he's going to have to do a lot during the season. I think those are the two biggest positives. The worst thing the preseason obviously was the Ian Wheeler injury. Sucks to see a young player who everyone liked, get hurt and basically end his year because he tore his ACL. Everyone forgets that, one play could end someone's season, especially even if it's just a helmet to his knee, which is what he got. Like, no one thinks about that being a terrible play because we're used to people tearing their ACLs with like a bad cut or like getting tackled hard. But it wasn't even that. It was just got hit in the helmet with the knee, got hit in the knee with his a helmet, and it blew his ACL out. We'll talk. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more later when we talk about Hard Knocks. But seeing his mom come there after he got blew out his knee was really sad.
So let me follow up by kind of asking you guys. I know we discussed the preseason being this, especially the last game, being a good avenue for these depth players to kind of showcase their talent, to either make the Bears roster or to put the league on notice and kind of give themselves an opportunity to make it onto another squad. We did see the injury, as you mentioned, Joe, from Ian Wheeler. So with that happening, do you agree with the way the Bears confronted the preseason starter-wise, and do you like the way that they gave Caleb Williams his certain reps throughout the preseason? Isaac, I'll start with you.
Yeah, definitely. I was noticing the trend around the league. It was either one or two ways. It was first, most teams that started their starters the first game, it was usually the first and second game, and then the last game they took a rest. And then there's other teams where they didn't start their starters until the last game. And even then in the last game was only like a drive or two. I'm just really happy that we were able to see the starters because I think, practice makes perfect. And these Bears, like especially this Bears team with a bunch of rookies that are gonna play meaningful snaps, they need as much exposure as they can. So I definitely would love. I did like seeing like that the Bears had their starters play the first and second game. I would have liked to seen them play in the last game. But at the same time, I remember Coach Eberflus was saying that, especially for Caleb Williams, it would be anywhere from 45 to 60 snaps, and I believe he played like 43 snaps. So it's a good number to leave off on. But the thing I also liked the most was in the Bengals game where the Bears had 3 drives of just straight 3-and-outs. And most teams probably would have been like, okay, like that's enough. Like we're just embarrassing ourselves. But the Bears coaching staff was like, no, we need to see, if Caleb Williams can come back from this adversity, and he definitely did in a big way. So yeah, I agree. I definitely like how, we approach the preseason, and it's gonna give us an extra edge in week 1 against the Titans.
Joe, what about you?
The thing that I will say is I do wish we saw the starters in the third game. It's 19 days between the last preseason game and the first game. At least let Caleb play, and maybe DJ and a couple of the receivers. I know we didn't have a lot of receivers healthy anyways, but letting Caleb play at least a drive or two in the last game, even if it is just against backups, it would have helped him develop a little more. Now, he did get 40 to 45 snaps, which is, like Isaac said, what Eberflus wanted them to get. But I would have still liked him to play a little bit more in the last preseason game. But I understand why they didn't play him. Like I said, he met what he needed to meet. But yeah,
I think we're all on the same page with their approach to the preseason. I also agree it would have been nice to see at least one drive during the Chiefs game, but as you can see, injuries can happen during this preseason. So thankfully, obviously terrible what happened to Ian Wheeler, but thankfully our starters came out of it healthy and were presumptive to be good for week 1, at least for the most part. So I'll transition that into kind of asking you guys, as I mentioned earlier, preseason is a great showcase for depth around the league. What did you guys enjoy to see, or what did you kind of learn from seeing the Bears' depth in action throughout the preseason? And did anything stick out to you? And yeah,
I'll take this first. I think, like I said earlier, we learned that this is a much deeper team than it was 2 years ago or even a year ago. They have a lot of talent that they developed. Our top 3 cornerbacks, we know they're good, but the bottom 6 that we had were all really good too. Isaac mentioned Reggie Stewart earlier. He played good in the last game. Terrell Smith, who played a little bit last year when Tariq Stevenson went down, got a pick six during the preseason. Or no, he didn't get a pick six. Sorry, he got an interception. He should have returned it, but he tripped or he went out of bounds, something like that. But if he kept his feet, he would have scored a touchdown. Then we saw players like Daniel Hardy explode, and I'm happy they kept him. We're going to talk about cuts and stuff later, but they ended up keeping him at least for now. We saw Adrian Colbert knock a pass away and get a almost sack. Well, he almost sacked the quarterback, but it ended up being the quarterback ended up getting the ball away. But that was Ray Stewart's pick six. Speaking of defense, I didn't mention this earlier, when we were talking about the takeaways. Another takeaway that I had from was that the defense was very aggressive after the Hall of Fame game, which I really enjoyed. It was a lot, which we didn't see a lot of last year. I think it again that just shows how much more confident Eberflus is in this defense. But yeah, going back to the other players, I think, and then on the offensive side of the ball, Bayless looked really good as a running back, which I mean isn't surprising because we know he's fast and he can cut. So like him getting 111 yards in the last preseason game is nice, and he's going to be a nice piece in the running game whenever we get the ball to him. I think Edson Bajent also really impressed me in the last 2 preseason games. Everyone was like, "Hey, we should put Brett Rippon as our second string quarterback for the Hall of Fame game." Bajent showed why that didn't happen. He played so good against the Bengals. He had 2 great touchdown passes, and then against the Chiefs, he played well too. He had a bootleg rushing score. which was really good. They also had more nice, yeah, also a couple other nice passes. But yeah, I'm really impressed with how Bears played overall. Like I said before,
For the depth for me, I think it's such a huge thing, especially what Joe mentioned earlier. And Ryan Poles even talked about it in a press conference. He was saying like this is the best depth we've had in a long time. And especially, I just want to highlight the offensive line depth specifically because in the past it was pretty bad, the depth of the offensive line. And looking at the backups, we have some guys with a lot of potential, like our third round pick, Kieran Amadiji. I think that's how you say it. But
Ryan Amagaji.
Amagaji, yeah, he's injured right now, but eventually he'll probably play some snaps as a swing tackle, and we'll see what's that like. And I was really surprised by Bill Murray. He had a really great preseason. I didn't expect him to even do any like meaningful, like make the team or something like that, and he made the 53, so that was crazy. And then Matt Pryor, I really liked what I saw out of him, especially when he was playing in right guard, filling in for Nate Davis. That was really cool. But yeah, the depth, like all over on offense and defense, has been spectacular, and I can't wait to see how this will play in, during the season. What about you, Eli? What do you think?
Now, I'll just kind of add to what you said about the offensive line depth, and kind of transition this into surprise cuts and that kind of thing. But for me, I think Jatiri Carter not making the team when we saw him last year get
Mhm.
meaningful reps for the Bears. Obviously, it wasn't a very talented unit last year, but to me, it was surprising, as I said, that a guy with live game reps who, in my opinion, didn't perform too bad for a guy that was just filling in for injury, but for him not to make the team speaks volumes to what the Bears think of this offensive line unit right now. And I agree with you. Bill Murray was a guy that was not on my radar at all. It just kind of seemed like a camp body, but the Bears were impressed, and it should be a good year for depth. And God forbid if injury happens along that offensive line, then the Bears are confident in what they have behind the starting five. Joe, I'll toss it to you. Any surprise roster moves throughout cut downs? What do you think?
I'll say there to me there wasn't any surprise cuts. There were a couple of people that I was surprised they kept. One of them being Dominic Robinson. Now I know that none of us, no, I don't want to say none of us, but a lot of fans and a lot of us don't think Dominic Robinson was done enough to earn the spot. And I agree with that. Like he didn't have a flashy preseason. I mean, I'm not too much of a tape guy, but I've heard apparently if you watch the tape, he's good on rundowns, which is part of the reason the Bears kept him. He's 6'5", 273 pounds, and they need someone to set edges and run plays. So that's why they kept him, which, okay, he doesn't get after the passer, which I guess you don't need everybody to do when you have a rotation and you have guys like Daniel Hardy who they kept who can get after the passer, and Austin Booker, who flashed a lot during the preseason, who can get after the passer. We'll see how good he does against number ones in the regular season. Hopefully, he can show what he did in the preseason against the starters. But yeah, Gamron was definitely one of them. I think one of the other surprise keeping guys was Travis Homer. He had a really bad drop in the last preseason game. I know the pass was kind of a little off, but like you're a NFL player. You should catch that ball. It shouldn't need to be perfect every single time for you to catch it. And yeah, he's a special teamer and he knows Shane Waldron. That's probably the reason they kept him, because he has a relationship with Waldron. But like he could have went. Our running back room right now is DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, Travis Homer, and Velus Jones, and Kyrie Blasingame, who they brought back. But yeah, it's the fact they kept Homer was really surprising to me.
Yeah, and to build off what Joe was saying, definitely surprised that Dominic Robinson was staying. I do believe that Poles just really likes like the people he drafts, and he likes giving them like multiple chances. We've seen that with Velas. He chose Velas over guys like Colin Johnson, stuff like that, and then he chose to keep Dominic Robinson again, despite not really showing us anything. And then Travis Homer was definitely a big surprise as well because he didn't really do much. And I get it that he's a good special teamer, but we're pretty solid at running back, and I'm pretty sure we could have found, we could have had someone else kind of fill in for him. He wasn't like Travis Homer was a like punt returner or kick returner or anything like that. And then what you were mentioning, Eli, about Carter getting cut, that was really big surprise for me because, I really thought he was a good asset to have on the team. He was versatile. He could play different guard positions. He even could play tackle if needed. Um, and also because he was one of the first Bears that they cut. So when I was on my phone on Twitter, I was scrolling through and I saw, Carter getting cut. And I was like, wow, like that's crazy. I wonder who they're gonna keep instead of him because I thought he was gonna make the team. I thought it was a no-brainer. But it is what it is. And I was seeing like on PFF, they were saying that Bill Murray had I think he got like a 90 overall grade in the preseason or something like that in one of the games. So that's nice to see. What,
Yeah,
what, what about you? Like, what do you think?
I think I completely agree with you guys. I think the entirety of the Bears fan base is kind of wearing thin on Dominique Robinson, but Joe did bring up a great point about the run stopping, and we do need to have that in that room. So I do understand as well that they kept him. But I do think another surprise one for me, I have been a believer in Noah Sewell, and I think he can develop into a good linebacker. But Micah Baskerville did have a pretty good camp, and for him to not make the roster, if that's correct, that was kind of my one of my other surprise there. But I still believe in Noah Sewell. I think Baskerville showed a lot in this camp.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I'll
think yeah, he's a better player for sure, but I'm noticing a trend here with Poles keeping his draft picks. Like it's hard to beat something like that, and especially Sewell. I believe he's younger, and Poles probably believes he thinks he has more potential. So I mean, I understand. I think Basketball should have been named to the starting roster over Sewell, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I
I
just
mean,
looked it up. Noah Sewell is 2 years younger. Baskerville
Mhm.
is 24. Sewell is 22. So you can see the idea, but I agree, Isaac. I think Poles is kind of attached to the guys he drafts. But Joe, did you
Yeah.
have something?
yeah, the only thing I'll say is, yeah, Baskerville did have a great camp and a great preseason. He got a couple pick sixes. Uh, but I think it does come down to it's not even just polls. Every GM does this when it comes down to cuts. They keep the people they draft because they have stock in them compared to the like undrafted guys they sign. They think that they're gonna become more, so they'll keep them even if a player did outplay them, which is a good and bad thing. You want to keep the good guy. You want to keep the guys that are good, but you all obviously hope that the guy that you draft becomes something. And Sewell didn't play all the preseason because he was hurt. He played the last game and he did miss a tackle. He had a really bad missed tackle, but that's about all we saw because he was hurt.
And that's another like quick conversation I want to have. I really like Ryan Poles. I really like what he's doing, but I feel like this is one thing that I'm kind of critical on with him because if you look around the league, like yeah, like Joe's right, most GMs do this, but some don't. For example, like the Colts, they cut their fifth, sixth, and seventh round picks this, you know, like a couple days ago. And for Poles, I get it. Like some players have a lot of potential. I definitely would keep, V-List. I think he has potential. Dominic Robinson might have potential, but at a certain point, you have to, look at yourself and be like, is it worth it to keep all these players that I've drafted because they might have high potential? Or should I just, here and at this position, should I just take someone that performed better at a higher level and it will give the team a better chance to win and be successful?
Yeah, the preseason is always an interesting time, and there's lots to keep an eye out on. Something else that we need to keep our eye out on is the next episode of Hard Knocks, which I think we can all agree is probably going to be pretty roster cut heavy, having to do with the 53 man and the cut down days. But we did have 2 episodes in between, so I kind of want to get your thoughts. We kind of did mention it earlier, the sneak peek with Ian Wheeler and the injury there, but what were your guys' thoughts, if not this latest episode, then the last episode on Hard Knocks? Isaac, I'll start with you.
This Hard Knocks, the last episode was pretty good. I really liked that segment with Tyson Bagent going to watch his dad arm wrestle. That was funny because he is like a professional athlete, like his dad, and but at the same time, it's like it's kind of I feel like I would be a little bit embarrassed watching my dad be all crazy, trying to arm wrestle someone like that. That was a cool moment. I liked how they put that in the show. And then also the thing with that Joe mentioned with Ian Wheeler, like his mom crying when she saw the text that he tore his ACL, that got me a little emotional because I mean it's not only affecting the player, it's also affecting his family. It's not just, this is like a livelihood for a lot of people. And for Wheeler to, have such a great preseason and to just get an ACL injury like that is devastating. Yeah, and then Joe, what did you think?
So this past episode, two things that stood out to me the most, I think, were the Willis Tower sky bridge thing, which I've never been there, so I don't know, but I don't know if you guys know either. But is the sky bridge itself, like the boxed in glass part, is that boxed in, or is it ledge? Like, is there a ledge there? Because from the way it's recorded, it doesn't obviously it's glass, but it looks like it's just like you could walk off it, which I doubt that's the case, but like to me it looks like you could walk off it. Well, I'm not scared of heights. I don't know if I'd like to be 103 feet up in the or 103 stories up in the air.
I visited Chicago once. I went over to watch the Bears preseason game. But the glass, it's kind of like let's say the building's like this, there's like a box. It's a glass box. So you could walk, but you like if you put your hands out, you'll feel the glass. So you can't really like, you're safe, but
Okay. I mean, yeah,
yeah.
I assume that was the case, but it just looks really weird on TV. It looks like you just walk straight off, which, like I said, I didn't think they would allow that because that wouldn't
Oh
be
yeah,
safe.
no way.
But like,
Yeah, I've been up. I haven't been to Chicago like that, but I've been up in the St. Louis Arch, and that's kind of the same ordeal. You're kind of leaning over the edge, and I'm good on that. Once is enough time for me. But as for Hard Knocks, I think this episode was people were kind of critical of it, and I disagree just because I think it was needed to kind of have that human element given that we haven't kind of seen. We've seen a little bit of it throughout Hard Knocks, but this episode was really heavy on seeing the connections that have been made throughout this training camp. I liked the episode. It was different than the others, but I think it was kind of enjoyable.
Yeah, and with Hard Knocks, I kind of want it to be more like human interaction because we always see like the serious side of the NFL. We never really see like the parents, like, and what goes on behind the scenes. Oh, and then one thing that I want to touch on was at the end of the episode when Ryan Poles was talking to Ian Wheeler and he was telling him like, "Hey, my phone's always on. You could always, come to me to talk, to cry, whatever you want to do." And I just think that is such an awesome thing to have as a trait for a general manager because my post could have just been like, oh, just like, screw you, whatever, like figure it out and stuff like that. But and it goes to show like it doesn't matter if you're like a first round pick, the franchise guy like Caleb Williams, or undrafted rookie like Ian Wheeler, like Ryan Post is always going to be there for you. So that's really nice to see.
No, I completely agree. It's definitely refreshing to have someone that is business, but is also involved in the players' lives and genuinely cares about who's on his roster.
the most important thing from the episode 3 that we should definitely talk about is uh we got insight into the Matthew Judon, us not getting Matthew Judon. Foles really wanted to get him, but Judon didn't want to sign. I think it was something like Judon didn't want to sign a contract, or it was something with a contract. So that was very insightful to learn. That's why Judon didn't come here. Yeah.
No, that is definitely a good something to bring up because I had completely forgot about that little era of Bears football there, to be honest. You kind of just you miss out on a trade and you move on. So that kind of flew over my head. So thanks, Joe, for bringing that up. So again, as we kind of run out of time here, just some general thoughts on the remainder of the preseason here. Obviously, no games left, but a week or so away from week one. Any thoughts beforehand on the off season and what to expect ahead? Isaac, I'll go with you.
Yeah, I'm excited for this season. I think the Bears are gonna, do really well. I specifically want to talk about leading up to week one. I hope they show in the last episode of Hard Knocks a little bit about the Bears getting ready for that week, like any if game plans or how the players are preparing. But this week, I think that they're gonna come out, or when they play the Titans, I think they're gonna have to come out fast on offense. They're gonna have to try to put up points right away because people are kind of overlooking the Titans. I think they made a lot of additions this offseason, especially on defense. With the recent trade of getting the Rams linebacker Ernest Jones, we'll see how the Bears do in the first game. And Caleb Williams saying like I don't get nervous at all. He's probably gonna be a little nervous, especially because it's like the first NFL game. But yeah, I'm excited for this season, and I hope that we start off on a W. So, what about you, Joe?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm so excited for the season. Uh, I haven't done too much prep for the Titans game yet. I'm going to. I will go off what you said though. They did make a lot of additions in defense. I wouldn't call them all good. Like they had Jamal Adams. I'm pretty sure Jamal Adams is cooked. He's not that good. So we shouldn't be scared about that. But there's a couple players on that defense that you can be scared about. One of them is Jeffrey Simmons. But yeah, I think the defense is a little scary. I don't know about their offense. I think their offense is pretty mid. I mean, Will Levis was okay last year. They might be missing DeAndre Hopkins. And Calvin Ridley was not that good last year. May have been good fantasy, but if you look at it, they only caught about 55% of his passes. So, like, that's not that good for a wide receiver one. So I'm not too frightened by the Titans. Anything can happen. Any given week in the NFL, you can lose. But I expect the Bears to win this, even if it is a close game. I expect them to win it. I think that if the Bears, obviously the Bears punt, the Titans are going to have to drive a long way because Corey Taylor spins that thing crazy. It'll be inside the 10 or 20 for sure, depending on where we're at on the field when we punt it. But yeah, I think the Bears stand a really good shot at winning this.
Yeah, historically, the Bears have gotten off to slow starts, but as everyone said in the offseason, it's not the same old Bears anymore. So hopefully we'll get off to a quick start. And Joe, I do agree. If we do get off to a slow start, we now have an X factor in Torrey Taylor to pin him deep, and we've got the defense to keep him there. So even with potential offensive struggles, I think we're in a good spot for week one.
I was just gonna say really quick that I think that the game against the Titans is gonna come down to the Bears offense versus the Titans defense because I feel like the Bears. Oh, I'm switching over to the other side. I feel like the Bears defense is gonna handle the Titans offense pretty easily. The offensive line is not that good, and they have a lot of young players up front. And then we'll see what Will Levis is gonna be able to do in Soldier Field, but I really do think it's gonna come down to the Bears offense against the Titans defense because like Joe said, they did make a lot of additions. Not some of them might not be as good, but either way, it's new players in the defense and the Bears offense, especially because we have so many new pieces. We kind of saw the good and the bad from the offense, so hopefully we'll just see more of the good week one. And yeah.
All right, awesome. Thanks everyone for tuning into this episode of the Bear Down Buzz podcast. We'll see you next time.